The road to $10,000 literally hits the road this evening. This is the NASCAR iRacing.com Pro Series for the first time in 2 seasons. We're at Watkins Glen International for round number 8 of 10 on the 2013 Pro Series campaign. Tim Terry, Evan Pasoko here to call all the action for you. And Evan, after a 2-week break, we're back at it, and for the only road course event of the Oval Pro season.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting thing to see. Taking a look at these guys, obviously, they're going to be dominant on the oval side of things. So I know some of these drivers, and most of them most likely, have been practicing throughout the week, trying to get these things nailed down throughout the practice. They've been sideways everywhere but straight, trying to get those lines nailed down, and it should be an interesting 45 laps tonight.
And one thing that hasn't changed, the team is still quick. Kenny Humpy, Rich Doucette, and Chad Lawton qualified in positions 1, 2, and 5 this evening. Those guys, or at least Rich Doucette told me earlier, he's not a road course guy. Really not one of those guys that really likes to turn left and right, but he is qualified in position number 2. He'll start on the outside of row number 1 when we go green in just a few moments' time. But you got a lot of guys in here. PJ Sturgis is one guy that knows road like the back of his hand. You'd have to believe Sturgis is the odds-on favorite this evening for this race. You got guys like Brandon Hawk who are quick, Dylan Duval, and you look down the list, Chris Overland, our point leader, is going to start in position number 9. He has a pretty hefty point lead at this point, but as we've seen with the NASCAR iRacing.com Series World Championship, nothing is safe.
Yeah, definitely taking a look through. PJ Sturgis is definitely seeming to be the favorite based on what everybody has been talking about in these 2 weeks off since we were last racing. Again, the only road course race of this, and this is race 8 of 10 in this season, keeping in mind obviously with the drop week. But you got to take a look at our points leader, Chris Overland, rather, in the 47. He qualified 9th. That's a solid position. He does have a pretty hefty point lead at this stage in the race, but this could really turn out to be a deciding factor on how comfortable he is going into the final 2 weeks.
We have one pace lap to get our field introduced to you. It's a 2.43 mile, if I can spit that out right, 8-turn road course, so we have a little bit of time to get this in, and we'll start on the front row. 58, the NRT Servers 58, is Kenny Humpy. He's looking for his 3rd consecutive win in this series. He turned in a 1 minute 6.94 second lap to his outside, his teammate, the Tim's Corner Motorsports number 96 of Rich Doucette.
Then you have the 57, PJ Sturgis, starting inside on row number 2 in the 3rd starting position, and Charlie Foster is going to roll to number 13 up, P4.
We got the double clutch number 26 at Chad Lawton rolling off from position at number 5 to the outside. Going to be the GX Gaming 42 of Dylan Duval.
You got Benjamin Burmeister starting in position number 7, the number 25 machine, and Brandon Hawk alongside him in the 53.
You got Pro Series point leader Chris Overland on the inside of row number 5, and to the outside, former Pro Series champion in the core pipe, number 82 of Alex Warren.
You got Mitchell Hunt starting P11 in the number 19 Real Lucky Machine. Brian Day in the number 4 starting P12.
You got Brandon Bowie on the inside of the next row, P13, as these drivers roll down the front straightaway for their 1 pace lap. To the outside, it's the 23 of Brandon Hoff.
Take a look at the 15th position belonging to the number 33 machine of Brian Blackford. Stephen Gilbert in the 37 is going to roll off 16th.
You got Alex Scribner rolling off in position 17 in the 50. Brad Mahar, 00 to the outside.
Brandon Schmidt and Landon Harrison going to make up P19 and 20th.
Tyler Laughlin in the 51. T-Loff rolls off from position number 21. Justin Bolton in the 36.
The number 10 machine of Tom Mustak is going to roll off position number 23, and alongside him, the number 87 Trey Edson rolling off P24.
You got Ashley Miller in the 7 on the next row. Sasha Wessler in the 31, also starting there too.
Billy Price in the 56 starting 27th, and Jeremy Lukaska in the 04 28th.
Last driver to take time in the qualifying session was Andrew Fash, the 3rd. First driver back in provisional land, and knocking on the door of the top 10 in points is Justin Trombley.
Then you got Robert Hall in the 30 machine rolling off 31st, and the 07 of Derek Crone going to start 32nd.
Rob Ackley deep in this field starts 33rd to the outside. Kwame Ajay, a driver knocking on the top 5 in the point standing, starts 34th.
In making up the rest of the field, the back row starting P35, the 71 machine of Shane Miller, and Brandon Chaburko in the 48 is going to be 36th and round out this field.
So we have 36 drivers getting ready to take the green flag, and this is a road race. A lot of pit strategy comes into play here as well. It's 45 laps around this racetrack. Do you run the race backwards? Do you try to run the tank empty, and then you make your pit stop. How do you do your strategy? Some of these teams, I'm sure, are going to play a little bit of pit strategy and see if it plays out in their favor. You got Kenny Humpy and Rich Doucette on the front row getting ready to see the green flag as they come out of the final turn this time by the First Racing Ford Mustang pace car. Will peel off to pit road, and the field will be in command of the NRT Servers Chevrolet SS of Kenny Humpy. He won the last 2 races of this season. 2-week break, we're back at it. Green flag flies, and we are underway at Watkins Glen. The 58 of Humpy trying to bring the 57 of Sturgis along with him. Watch Sturgis. He's going to be quick here as they funnel down into corner number 1.
Contact 13, Charlie Foster around in front of the field as everybody scrambles to get around him. He is sideways there in turn 1. No caution flag is going to fly after making contact with the 28 of Chad Lawton down there going into 1.
Yeah, they got on the binders heavy. 26 and 25 were side by side. That's Burmeister and the 26 of Lawton, and the 13. I don't think really anticipated him there, and as the 13 comes around, the S is the 36 that Justin Bolton is around. Not sure how he got around, but the winner this season already at Phoenix was around, I believe, T-Loff in the 51, and may have put that 36 in the guardrail after a little bit of a checkup in front of them.
Yeah, taking a look at the 51 machine, got on the binders and actually got into the back of the 3 of Brandon Schmidt, and then you had the 36 machine of Bolton cut behind that and got clipped by the 51 and actually made some pretty significant contact with the inside guardrail there going up through the S's, and that 36 car is destroyed right now on the racetrack.
Leaders have completed lap number 1 of 45, and it is Kenny Humpy out in front by 7/10 over PJ Sturgis, and Benjamin Burmeister has made his way up into position number 3. The German driver is trying to claw his way to the front. He leads Rich Doucette and Dylan Duval to complete the top 5 spots here at this point. Top 10 all the way back to Brian Blackford, about 7 seconds. So these drivers starting to stretch their way out a little bit and maybe find a place to race at this point. A lot of these drivers used to doing the ovals. It's a little bit hard sometimes to get into that rhythm of a road course and try to hit all your marks for 45 laps.
Yeah, definitely. How about Burmeister there sitting P3? He started this race in the 7th spot. He made it 3 wide going down into there into turn number 1 on lap number 1 inside of Lawton into 26, and that may have been a benefiting factor in why the 13 got turned around, because you mentioned I don't think that he was expecting the 26 machine of Lawton to be there. That's because Lawton had the 25 on the inside. So Benjamin Burmeister proved to be a factor in this race, and he's not wasting any time getting up and sitting in the top 3 right now after that aggressive move on the opening lap. So he's already picked up 4 spots as he comes around now to take lap number 3. Kenny Humpy, the 58 machine, sitting P1. PJ Sturgis going to lose some time this last lap. He's going to drop to about 1.7 seconds off of that race leader.
And you look at Benjamin Burmeister in the 25 car. He is one of those drivers that's running a part-time season in this NASCAR iRacing.com Pro Series. He's only run 2 of the first 7 events in this series. He's 40-something in the point standings, 47th, I think, the last time I looked at the standings. But Benjamin Burmeister coming out here, trying to prove something, trying to prove that he can race on the road course in this Gen 6 Cup car. And he's proving himself fairly well right now in position number 3 as he pulls away from Rich Doucette and Dylan Duval in the top 5. Chad Lawton in 6. Mitchell Hunt is on the 26 car for position number 6. The RealLucky.com number 19 on the back bumper of the double clutch number 26 as they work down through the final couple of corners. Chris Overland, Brandon Hawk, and Brian Blackford complete your top 10 at this point. And I talked to Chris Overland earlier in the week. He wants to win this Pro Championship, but that one bullet he knows he really has to dodge is this evening at Watkins Glen. If he can come out of here with a decent point lead, no point lead is comfortable because we saw Tyler Hudson lose almost or gain almost a race or over a race on Ray Alfala in 3 races as Mitchell Hunt has a little bit of a moment in turn number 1. He's going to lose a spot to Chris Overland in the number 47. You can have a 1-race lead, but as Ray Alfala found out, you can easily lose it in 3 races, especially when these drops factor in. So Overland knows that no point lead is safe, but he can feel a little bit safer if he gets out of here tonight with, let's say, a top 10 finish.
Yeah, definitely, because then they got to take only 2 races to go in Henry tonight with the drops in effect. He has a 30-point lead over the car sitting second in the standings, which is Brandon Schmidt at this point. You talked about Mitchell Hunt having a little bit of a moment in turn number 1. You were talking about how he was on the back bumper of Dylan Duval in the 42. sitting in 5th. Mitchell Hunt was on that back bumper going down the front straightaway after a real good job coming off of turn number 8 there and down the front stretch, and maybe just overdrove it a little bit, got up on those rumble strips, and thing got sideways, so a good piece of driving to keep it pointed forward, but nonetheless, evidently letting those cars get around him. Taking a look at the 4th place car, 96 Richard Doucette, starting to slowly close in maybe on the 25 of Benjamin Burmeister behind him. Dylan Duvall's not too far back, about a second off of that car. So these guys inside that maybe top half and the top 10, they're pretty close to each other, but obviously things starting to pan out here as we're looking at 45 laps currently right now. Race leader Kenny Humping, the 58 machine, continuing to pull away from PJ Sturgis. Sturgis maybe one of the favorites for tonight's race. He's 3.1 seconds back at this point as they work lap 5 under the green.
Tom Moustakas took a header in the S's. I don't know if Laura can get a camera on that one. That's the number 10 of Moustakas, and that's going to end his night. If it doesn't, it's he's going to spend a lot of time in the pits because he hit the Armco really, really hard coming out of the S's. Tough break for Moustakas, was running in the top 20 when that happened. Kenny Humpy comes by this time and completes lap number 5. And speaking about some hard hits, Evan, we did have 3 drivers last week, or I say last race, that were suspended due to incidents. You look at Josh Berry and Nick Morse, those 2 drivers had enough incidents in those races that they are suspended for 2 races as opposed to 1 race. John Adams also on the bench for this race, but Josh Berry, Nick Morse, they were involved in a few incidents at Richmond before Christmas, so their Christmas present from the series officials is you can sit for 2 weeks. We'll see them at the series finale when we crown the Pro Series champion at Charlotte.
Definitely, and that's tough for Josh Berry. Again, he was sitting 3rd in the standings, or he is sitting 3rd in the standings entering tonight. Obviously, that's going to hurt. All depending on what, obviously, that's going to count as most likely his drop. Depending on his worst finish, and if he can get into the next 2 races of the season finale when he rejoins us. So again, just up there in contention. If Overland has troubles, he was only 34 points back, and now that's going to have a dampen on that. Overland, again, the championship leader right now in the 47 machine, sitting P7. You said that he'd be satisfied with getting out of this with a top 10. He's sitting 7th right now. He's picked up 2 spots on the misfortune of others. Mitchell Hunt. He got around him when Hunt had a moment, and then the 13 machine had trouble early on in the race, and that's how he picked up another spot. Charlie Foster actually all the way back up to 23rd at this point after going all the way to the end of the line after that opening issue. So Foster, obviously with a fast race car, qualified 4th, trying to pick his way back to the field and salvage what he can here in the opening laps at Watkins Glen.
We mentioned Overland trying to keep that point lead. His closest chaser in the standings is Brandon Schmidt in car number 3, and the 3 is chasing 33 right now for position number 10 as they run through the S's and up the hill on lap number 7. There is a 30-point difference, as you mentioned, with the 1 drop. When you don't factor in the drop, it's 29 points between those 2 drivers. Overland's 1 drop being 13 and Brandon Schmidt's being 14. And we're talking about a drop. If you're new to this NASCAR iRacing.com Pro Series, there is 1 drop race. There's 10 races. The best 9 races count towards your point total. So that worst race is going to be dropped from your point total altogether. With Overland having a drop of 13, or a worst race of 13, Brandon Schmidt's worst race being a 14-point event. So if they score less than that, then that drop is factored into their points again, and whatever is the worst races. Brandon Schmidt is slow on the final corner. The 3 car is going to slow down, and is he had a fuel or something here maybe, and he's going to pick it back up again. That was maybe a slowdown, I guess, Evan. He may have got caught by the officials to slow that car down, may have cut the course here. I didn't catch that, but he just lost 1, 2, 3, 4 spots.
He's getting back up to speed. He's talking right now that he was given a black flag by the sim, so you pretty much hit that right on the head there. So again, I took a look back at the final, those last few turns that he took. I didn't see anything where he was really, pushing the edge there on maybe a run out strip there coming off the corners or anything, but he still has the black flag. He's relaying over radio that he's being told to hold for 38 seconds or so. So he's discussing that right now with the officials to try to get that cleared. He's sitting P14 though. I don't know if he's going to be successful in getting this thing removed though.
Yeah, I just looked back at the last lap for Brandon Schmidt, and I didn't see anything that would really warrant a black flag, at least from the sim. If you're new to this iRacing service, watching this for the first time, the drivers that do cut the course, and we talk about maybe cutting a corner or cutting the grass, they usually get a slowdown penalty and are told to slow down and give up some time or give up the positions or whatever the case may be. In that last lap, I don't see Brandon Schmidt cutting the course enough to warrant one of those black flags. I don't know where the sim would have picked that up, but as you mentioned, if you don't slow down, you do get a physical black flag, which means you have to stop on pit road for however long the sim deems that you would have possibly made up there. And 30-something seconds, I guess, is the number that the sim came up with for Brandon Schmidt, and right now scored in position number 14. The race officials, this race does have live officials, have not cleared that black flag penalty. So if he doesn't come down in the next couple of laps, the sim will pull his scorecard, and he'll have to come down pit road, if not be disqualified, if that's the case right now on the 3 car as he works up through the final couple of corners.
Trouble for the 51 machine. Tyler Lawton is going to go around and into the outside wall, and he has taken a tow back to the pit lane after having trouble. Looks like it was coming out of the bus stop. He got that thing sideways. The 13 machine had a nice view of that. Charlie Foster had his windshield, and at 51 trying to hang on and just finally got those right side tires on the grass coming out of the bus stop. And when he went to the big, wide, sweeping turn, just could not hang on to it, spun that thing around and nosed it in first into the outside wall, and he is being towed back to the pits. Don't see him on pit road right now, so that could be very problematic for sure. Keep in mind, this could be a very big scenario here that we're talking about with the 3 machine Brandon Schmidt. He has had to come down the pit road and serve this penalty. He entered tonight second in the championship standings. Josh Berry, who's third, not in tonight's race, and Landon Harrison, who's fourth, is 15th. So Chris Overland, point leader right now, sitting P7. Things are going his way at this point.
Yeah, it's a tough break for Brandon Schmidt, and we're trying to get some sort of explanation from the iRacing officials as to where he possibly cut the course. But I don't see anything on the last lap from that black flag, because he slows down in the final couple of corners when he does receive that black flag. I don't see anything there that would have warranted a black flag, but we'll have to wait and see if officials respond to our comment, I guess, to look into that and get us a explanation. But nevertheless, Kenny Humpy is your leader. As we mentioned, PJ Sturgis is 7 seconds behind. Kenny Humpy is picking him up and laying him down, and he's one of those drivers that knows how to qualify, especially on ovals. A driver that once you put a hot lap down, he's one of those drivers you can really count on, and he's putting down a bunch of hot laps these last few. Kenny Humpy last time by 109.12 to PJ Sturgis is 110.04, so he's pretty quick as he comes by this time. 11 laps in the books. Humpy, Sturgis, Burmeister, Doucette, and Duval, your top 5.
And definitely don't forget, these guys are going to have to make one pit stop in tonight's race. They can go maybe 26 laps, 29 if they're saving. I don't see any reason to save at this point, because you're most likely not going to get a caution unless the officials throw something at a road course. So again, you mentioned the pit strategy really could come into a big factor here, and if you make a mistake, can you recover from that at all? Again, Sturgis second. He's now 7 seconds back, so it's pretty clear that the 58 of Kenny Humpy right now, the class of the field, he went over the laps. He's running about a second quicker than Sturgis that last time by. Actually, PJ Sturgis picking it up, but was still 4/10 slower this last time around as they continue to work under the green flag here. So Kenny Humpy just needs to stay consistent. Those are some guys that are more confident with going right and left, you could say. Some of these guys, you can tell, are struggling a little bit. They're sideways and stuff, but they're putting in a good amount of effort here, and it's been a pretty clean race so far if you ignore the little bit of contact that we saw going into turn number 1 on the start. Some guys self-spinning, but that's just the way this road course is. Watkins Glen International is no easy road course by any stretch of the imagination.
Looking back at the replay, I'm going to see if Laura can't get this queued up in a second, but I think I found the what happened to Brandon Schmidt, and it's a pretty borderline call on the sim, and I'm sure the officials look back at it, but I'm going to grab Laura a number here, Evan, and we'll get this up here in a second.
And definitely, obviously, everybody's still talking about the issues with Brandon Schmidt there. Again, keep in mind, in the number 3 machine, he's sitting P33 right now, 1 lap down. Now, where he was sitting, about 14th place, this is big. Again, with the drops, he is 2nd in the championship standings, entering tonight's race, 30 back. So Chris Overland, with a pretty comfortable lead, you could say, entering tonight. But now he finds himself again outside of the top 30, a lap down. That issue right there, that black flag, could be a championship deciding factor in this thing.
And Laura gets this keyed up. What you're looking at is the 3 car gets a little bit loose after the bus stop, and he's going to clip the grass on the other side of the rumble strips with that right side tire. That is what the sim deemed as cutting the course. That's the only thing that I can see in that lap leading up, or those seconds leading up, that would warrant a black flag. And if that's the case, Evan, there's I don't see where he cut the course enough to warrant a 30-second penalty. But that's why I'm up here and not in the race officials booth. That's really tough for Brandon Schmidt right now, as he's sitting in position number 33. His drop is 14 points, back in 33rd place. This is probably going to be his drop race if it continues to be where it is.
Yeah, definitely. Charlie Foster continuing to just go on a tear at this point in the race in the number 13 machine. He's sitting 14th right now. Mind you, 36 seconds off a race leader, but we saw him get turned around again right there in turn 1 after contact with Chad Lawton there, going into turn 1 on the start after Benjamin Burmeister made it 3 wide. He went around all the way to the back of the pack. Again, he's sitting 14th right now. He's still way behind the leader, but he has driven through about 20 cars to get to where he is. So Charlie Foster in the 13 doing a very solid job right now.
Yeah, Charlie Foster working his way back up through the field. We mentioned Kenny Humpy's lights out on hot laps. The number 13 put up something on the board this evening that I wasn't expecting, and a lot of others weren't expecting. P4 on a road course for Charlie Foster. But you got to remember, Last Row Motorsports, they have PJ Sturgis on the team, and PJ knows a thing or two about these road courses. He's running second right now to Kenny Humpy, who continues to lay down some quick laps in the number 57 car, albeit 8 seconds behind the 58 car. But you look at PJ Sturgis, you look at the Charlie Foster car, you look at Chris Overland, your point leader, who, as we mentioned before, really wasn't sure what to expect this evening, but now he sits in position number 7, and he continues to work up through the field as he has caught Chad Lawton in the number 26 car, and he's actually only a couple car lengths off the 26, and even the 96 and the 42 within sights of this 47 car. So if the 47 can continue what he's doing, it'll look pretty good right now.
Yeah, again, when those guys, again, positions about 4th through 7th, they're not that far apart of each other. You know, maybe 2-3 seconds between those guys respectively. So you got to take a look at Mitchell Hunt. Remember, Mitchell Hunt got sideways after getting on the back bumper of Lawton in the number 26 machine. Mitchell Hunt dropped back to 8th after getting passed by Overland. He has not been able to make up that ground. There's actually 5 seconds behind Chris Overland at the moment. So that's the thing about these kind of races, and when you're nice and close, is if you get sideways, you make a mistake, you're still going to hang on to it, but you could spend 10 of these laps working hard, get around somebody, and just one mistake puts you right back. And that's why you mentioned it's hard for these guys to get into a rhythm at this kind of track, and that's really going to be the key to the race, because we're working out number 16 at the moment, about 1/3 of the way through this race already, but it takes a lot of concentration to hit your marks in all 8 of these turns, lap in, lap out.
Looking at the drivers that are on the lead lap right now, we have 31 of them in total, all the way back to Brandon Bowie in the 54 car, who sits in position number 31. Brandon Schmidt, after that penalty, is 1 lap down. Justin Bolton sitting on pit road right now, and it looks like he's acquired more damage to that race car. Not sure where that came from, but he is 1 lap and about to be 2 laps down to the field. And T-Loff and Tom Moustakas, accident damage, they are out of the race. But I'm going to go back here and see if I can't find anything for Justin Bolton. And indeed, he went off the racetrack a couple of times. Not his night. Winner already this season in the number 36 car, but a lot of damage in that last lap leading up to him coming onto pit road. And you can see on the right side of that car and the front end of the 36 car, as it sits on pit road, that's not optimal.
Yeah, definitely taking a look again. Kenny Humpy still out in front, dominating at this point. Picked up a couple more tenths on PJ Sturgis these last few laps, but he's not pulling away as fast as he was before. Remember, originally Humpy was running laps about a second quicker than Sturgis. Sturgis started to bring it down and is now running laps pretty much even with Kenny Humpy in the 58. So both the 57 and the 58 positions 1 and 2 are even at this point. So maybe Sturgis liking these longer green flag runs. Maybe he's saving his tires a little bit, or maybe he just takes some time to get into his rhythm. 8 seconds is going to be a lot to make up without the help of a caution flag and come down pit road. You're going to really need to nail that and not make any mistakes. A speeding penalty on that, you got to go all the way around this thing, go down that pit lane, and that could really kill you in a scenario like this. But PJ Sturgis lost a little bit more time on Kenny Humpy that time by. He was only 3/10 slower than him, so he's starting to close the gap. But the 58 of Humpy is still definitely the fastest out there right now.
And Humpy in traffic as Shane Miller hits the wall behind your leader. The number 71 car has that moment coming out of the bus stop. Kenny Humpy has Brandon Bowie and Andrew Fayash III directly in front of him right now, so the 58 car is about to put the 29th and 30th place cars 1 lap behind the pace. And we mentioned Sturgis. He knows these road courses. He knows some pit strategy. Maybe he knows something that Kenny Humpy doesn't know at this point, as Bowie will make his way past Fayash, and Fayash will get lapped by your leader, Kenny Humpy, in 58. And that will put the 157 back in position number 29, 1 lap behind. Sturgis running 9 seconds behind in position number 2, and looking at the lap times, it looked like Humpy the last 2 laps picked up about a quarter second on Sturgis to pad that lead in front. Benjamin Burmeister sitting in 3rd, being chased down by Dylan Duval, who has Chris Overland now to the back bumper by about a second or so. Overland made the move on a couple of drivers that were there. Rich Doucette in the 96 has fallen a bunch of spots here, and did he possibly come down pit road the last time, Evan? I didn't catch anything, but the 96 car was up in the top 5 at one point.
Right now he is continuing to drop at this point as the scoring continues to loop through an update, so not too sure. But the 23 machines, yeah, so Richard Doucette and Chad Long are going to come down the pit lane that last time. They're hoping they can make it on fuel, but about 26 laps. There's about 26 laps to go, so that's going to be close. That could be a deciding call, and maybe picking up a few spots, short pitting unless they plan on making 2 stops, but a little bit of strategy being thrown in there. We got a big group of cars here. 13th on back, you got the 23 of Brandon Hoff, and the 87 of Trey Edson, Landon Harrison, and the 89 machine is there. Alex Warren is there as well, and Brian Day. Those 5 cars are within 2 seconds of each other, and they've pretty much been that way these last few laps, all bumper to bumper. Nobody's made any passes yet. They're just kind of riding around buying their time as a group, but that's just something to keep an eye on as this race progresses.
And if Stephen Gilbert makes any sort of mistake in the 37, he'll be back in this pack as well, because Gilbert is only about 5 car lengths or so ahead of Brandon Hoff in car number 23. As drivers continue to come down pit road, Brad Mahar in the 00 is visiting his pit crew this time by. As the scoring loops once again, a couple of more drivers will make their way down to the attention of their crews, and this is the close to the halfway point in this race. This is a 45 lap event. We are working lap number 20 of 45, and the 58 car will come up out of the final corner, come down this time, complete lap number 20. So 25 laps remaining in this event for the 58 of Humpy, as we mentioned, looking for his 3rd consecutive victory. We went through the first 7 races, did not have a repeat winner, the first 6 races did not have a repeat winner. Then Humpy, who won Michigan, also won Richmond, and now is looking for the win at Watkins Glen International. As you ride on board with, I believe, Brandon Hawk, which would be car number 53, running in position number 7 as he comes up off the final corner and will come down across the stripe here in the RacerBoost.com, number 53, chasing down Mitchell Hunt in the 19.
He's going to work his way into turn number 1. He's looking up at the 19 of Mitchell Hunt, trying to close in, maybe pick up a spot. Hunt sitting 6th, and Brandon Hawk currently sitting P7 right now. As you mentioned, it is number 53 machine. Chad Overland just up in front of him, or Chris Overland rather. Chris Overland is the 47, again championship leader at this point. He's actually up to P5 right now, as he's going to go side by side through the bus stop, as some cars getting around him, and looking like maybe some electrical issues for the 47 through that bus stop.
Trey Edson and former point leader Landon Harrison on pit road. They were in that little cluster around the top 12, so they'll come down and surrender their spots to get some new tires and some more fuel into their race cars as Kenny Humpy continues to lead this thing. And it appears that Dylan Duval will move into position number 4 here, and Chris Overland may have an issue because Overland not on the racetrack right now, and his ping has skyrocketed to about 8 times what it should be. So that's not good for Overland, and he's back now, but that's scary.
This is definitely not what he wants to see. I was trying to see the car that was passing him going through that bus stop, but I thought it was something on my end, but he is blinking in and out real bad. He was gone down that whole front straightaway. He's back now on the exit of the S's, so obviously he's been driving the whole time. We have not seen him, and that was too close to call, or too close to comfort, you could say, on his end. He's hanging in there on the server, and he's back right now. No blinking these last few turns, so hopefully that settles down for the 47 of Overland, because he sets to see if he stays where he is right now, P5, he set to gain a lot out of tonight's race.
And that will be, as you mentioned, position number 5 behind Benjamin Burmeister and a little ways ahead of Mitchell Hunt. And when you look at it, if you're new to iRacing, these drivers are all connected to a server. Wherever they are in the world, be it Benjamin Burmeister in Germany, or a Brandon Hawk in Canada, or a Dylan Duval in Canada, or one of the drivers from the USA, they're all connected to a server, and their connection is what's giving them their internet connection going to the server. And if there's a lapse in between your internet connection, your computer, and the server, it shows up. And obviously Chris Overland had some sort of issue there between his computer and the server host, and Overland was gone for almost a lap, and that almost was a big faux pas when it comes to the championship. We've seen Brandon Schmidt have an issue this evening running P32 right now after that penalty. You'd have to believe Overland needs some sort of hiccup in these last 3 races in order to lose that championship. But Overland right now, obviously the race isn't over. There might be some weather in the area. Whatever the case may be, he just dodged a big bullet. As long as he can keep it on the racetrack for the remaining 22 laps of this race, he should be okay.
Everybody continuing now to cycle down the pit lane. Another driver coming down to 157 of Andrew Fayas. So about half the field has made their pit stops. Only 16 cars remaining on the lead lap at this point. Dylan Duval in the 42 machine down pit road from P3. So all eyes are going to go on the race leaders now as Benjamin Burmeister continues to sit in 3rd. Chris Overland going to move up to 4th as Duval is down the pit lane. Kenny Humpy, race leader, now 10.2 seconds ahead of Sturgis in the 58. They're about that halfway point in this race, so all eyes are going to be on the 58 and how solid he makes this pit stop here.
The 42 on pit road at the end of that. GX Gaming number 42 at Dylan Duval. And I talked to competition director for Cody Bias Racing, James Pileski, earlier in the week. They moved some personnel within that team. Adam Gilliland is now responsible for going to get hot dogs from the hot dog stand. But now Dylan Duval comes off of pit road. Pileski told me that team feels like they have a good road course program. And Alex Warren running in the top 15 prior to this round of green flag pit stops. Dylan Duval running around that top 5 position. They seem very confident with what their road course program has. And with Dylan Duval, a couple of missteps in the first races of this season, trying to get himself back into contention for a top 20 spot in this series. Duval needs a great run here this evening, and so far so good for the 42 car as he runs 37th in the standings. And it might not be necessarily the top 20 he's looking for, but 21st to 30th in this series, get a pro license returned to them, which means they can not only get into the series next season, but they also have the opportunity to qualify for the NASCAR iRacing.com Series World Championship events when they come up beginning, we anticipate, in February. So if you can't get in the top 20, the consolation would be to regain your pro license, and that's what he wants to do right now. But sitting 37th with that drop, he's got some ground to make up, got some time to make up, and Duval right now running in position number 8 after that stop. He's got to be on his game.
He's had some good races, but he's had his off weeks as well, and not really a solid performance, you could say, on his behalf. PJ Sturgis has already come down the pit lane that last time by, and now race leader Kenny Humpy in the 58 is going to pull down the pit lane and enter his pit stall to make his stop down there at the end of pit road. So pit stall number 1, taking a look at what he does as the 96 rolls in. Left side tires going to go up on the cars. They fill that thing up with Sunoco race fuel. Right side going to go up as well. So 4 tires and fuel for the 58 machine of Kenny Humpy. He's off and away, and it looks like without incident.
So the 58 car is continuing to be a rocket ship on this racetrack. PJ Sturgis is going to have to once again step it up here in this final segment of this race in order to have a shot at coming home a victor. And mentioned earlier in this season, he's been close a couple of times, but he hasn't been able to get in there and get that victory. There was one race earlier in the season where he got popped for a lane change on one of the late restarts, and instead of finishing up in the top 5 or the top 10, I'm not sure where he finished, but we know he got a penalty on that last restart at one of those races earlier this year that he really thought that he was going to get a good finish to it. PJ Sturgis right now in the top 5, was running second prior to the pit stops. Better believe the 57 car will be on a mission, and he's going to try to click off some quick laps here. Easy for me to say, but Humpy has been lights out in the first 25 laps of this thing.
He's going to come out of that final turn and down the long front straightaway this time by, and he is 6 seconds behind current race leader 25 machine of Benjamin Burmeister. The 25 machine has had a solid night, has yet to hit the pit lane in this race to this point. So once he does that, he is going to obviously have Kenny Humpy reassume that number 1 spot right now. So it's about 6 seconds that Benjamin Burmeister currently has over Kenny Humpy, and takes a lot more than 6 seconds to make that pit stall. So gotta take a look back at PJ Sturgis. Sturgis about 14 seconds back from Humpy, so that's about 8 or 14 seconds back from Burmeister, making it about 8 seconds back from Kenny Humpy. So PJ Sturgis picking up 2 seconds through that cycle of pit stops there as things start to finalize here, and everybody makes sure that they get their stuff done, waiting on the 25 of Benjamin Burmeister to do his as he works through the final 2 corners, possibly coming down this time by again. It's lap 27, so that tank's going to start to get empty here soon. He's not going to come down this time by, he's going to go around again. So just something to keep an eye on. That PJ Sturgis might try to close the gap on Kenny Humpy, depending on what he can do. 8 seconds, still a long time, with not a lot of laps to go as we're past the halfway point, down on the downhill side of things at this point.
There's no more pit stops. There's no more, we're not going to see a caution. There's no way that this field's going to get bunched up. If PJ Sturgis wants this win, or Chad Lawton or Rich Doucette or somebody outside wants this win, they're going to have to do that, and they're going to have to do it on their own unless Kenny Humpy either has an off or gets wrecked or has a connection issue to the server or something like that happens. Essentially, Kenny Humpy, I don't want to say has this race in his hand, Evan, but he can control his own destiny right now as long as he doesn't get caught up in some lap traffic. He's got Rob Ackley in front of him right now, the 22 car. He's a gentleman. I'm sure he'll give the 58 car a little bit of room here as they go down the straightaway and looking up towards the final couple corners. He does give him a little bit of room, and the 58 car will work by. The 58 car at this point really controls his own destiny as he comes by. 28 laps completed in the book at the stripe for driver number 58, Benjamin Burmeister, on to pit road now, which means Humpy will take back the lead. Burmeister will surrender that first place spot to come down for his pit stop, and the 25 car has had a really good race so far. We mentioned only part-time season for the 25 of Benjamin Burmeister, but he's impressed me so far this evening.
Yeah, definitely. Right now, 22 cars remain on the lead lap. Last car on the lead lap right now. The driver of the number 4 machine, that's Brian Day, sitting P22, but 1 minute and 5 seconds back. So within threatening range of losing his lap, as again, Kenny Humpy has now retaken the number 1 spot in the 58, and as things start to cycle through, PJ Sturgis about 9 seconds back from him right now, as Benjamin Burmeister now exiting the pit lane alongside Andrew Fayash. They're going up through the S's. Over Fayash is 1 lap down, sitting at 31st. Again, credit to the driver, that number 13, Charlie Foster, continuing to go on a tear, sitting P10. I know I kind of talked about it around lap 15 after having that trouble in lap 1, was able to just close his eyes and hold the brakes, and nobody rammed into him there on the start of the race. He got back going, and now he's sitting inside the top 10 again. 41 seconds back of race leader, but he has passed a lot of cars, and the 13 machine deserves credit for where he is right now and salvaging what he can out of this race. And with still about 16, 17 laps to go, I wouldn't be surprised if he makes up a couple more.
It seems like everybody has stretched out a little bit. The closest battle on this racetrack may be back at 16th place right now. Landon Harrison in the 89 and the 87 of Trey Edson going at it. About 4 car lengths in between them for position 16 and 17. And actually, Robert Hall's not too far behind, about a second or so behind the 87 of Trey Edson, and Alex Warren about a second or so behind him at this point, as these drivers looking for the drivers in front of them to possibly make a mistake. I don't think, with these drivers having crew chiefs and spotters and all those other things, I don't think they would have missed it on the fuel strategy. But just don't have an off, don't cut the course, because we saw what that can do earlier. Don't lose connection, because we saw what that can do to you earlier, even though Overland really didn't get a penalty for the same thing Brandon Schmidt did by the looks of it. But you really need to keep yourself on the course and keep yourself on the blacktop and not on the grass, and you're going to probably maintain the position you are, even though the 30 car of Robert Hall has company in the 82 of Alex Warren. Warren closed in almost a second that last lap and is on the back bumper of the 30 as he had a wiggle coming out of the S's, and the 82 of Alex Warren will take the spot. Close call for the 30.
Yeah, definitely taking a look at those guys going at it back there, about 19th position or so. You talked about the 30 machine. Robert Hawley's got that thing pointed the right direction now and starting to move back forwards here. A little bit of a battle again. You talked about it between Landon and Harrison, but now Harrison is starting to catch up to Jeremy Lukaska on the 04 machine, as Lukaska is announcing that he's going to come down the pit lane this time coming out of that final corner. So Luka's going to give up P15 to hit the pit lane. So now that goes back to a Harrison-Edson battle for position number 15. Edson about 3-4 car lengths still off the back bumper of that machine, and Alex Warren in the 82 is starting to close in on these guys as well. So don't count him out as well as this battle continues. One thing to note again, Benjamin Burmeister started this race 7th, worked his way up into the top 3, was passed by Duval before the green flag pit stops started to cycle through. He stayed out to lead a few laps and evidently lost about 3-4 spots from that, because when he comes back out and gets back going with the group, he's in his number 25 machine. He's now sitting P7. So he's going to lose a couple spots, but still right now sitting solid. Chris Overland in front of him in 6th. Richard Doucette, the 96, sitting in P5. Dylan Duval, the 42, helping himself out here tonight, sitting P4. Chad Lawton, 26, in 3rd. PJ Sturgis still in 2nd, but he's about 12 seconds off the back bumper of race leader Kenny Humpy, still sitting up there P1 in that 58.
And one driver that's had a pretty good season so far has been Brian Blackford in the number 33 car. When you look at the point standings without the drop, the 33 sits in position number 5 in the standings when you factor in the one drop. And Blackford has a pretty big drop at this point compared to others. He's got an 18-point drop, so his worst race was an 18-point affair. He runs in position number 11 right now and continues to work his way through the field in the hammer down Snowcomb Productions Ford Fusion. He's one of those drivers, Evan, that's a staple in the NASCAR iRacing.com Series World Championship. It's like a Bobby Labonte or a Jeff Gordon or one of those drivers that's always in one of those series like the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series. Brian Blackford is one of those drivers that you really come to know when it comes to the NASCAR iRacing.com Series World Championship. And Blackford struggled last season. He's now in this Pro Series trying to get his way back up into the big dance, and as we mentioned, the 11th in standings. When you factor in that one drop, he's well on his way to doing so, and well on his way here to at least a top 15 finish and maybe even a top 10 finish if he can get up on the wheel in the closing laps of this race. 33 car. I think he's still got something to prove here in this season as we close in on these final 2 events coming up in the next 2 weeks here. Our coverage presented by Double Clutch on LSRTV. WinOnMonday.com is the place to go to check out Double Clutch and all the cool initiatives that they have here, and also a proud supporter of sim racing and a proud supporter of the 26 car of Chad Lawton and the 47 of Chris Overland, who run in position 3 and 7 right now, and Brian Day also. And there's another driver that's been trying to get some good luck, and he's been trying to look for it everywhere. It seems like Brian Day will have a couple of good races, and then he'll have a string of bad races. And when you look at it, Brian Day in the points, 23rd when you factor in that drop. The 4-car continuing to look for something good here. He sits in position number 20, the second driver 1 lap down.
Brian Day's 23rd in the championship standings. You mentioned top 20 going to get locked in. 21st through 30th, you get the pro license, but they have to compete for the final 3 spots to get in to those world championship races coming up here next month. So very competitive points around 20th. Got Chad Lawton, a very solid driver. He's sitting 19th. 1 point behind him, Alex Scribner is sitting 20th. 2 points behind him, you got the guys on the outside looking in. Derek Crone sitting P21. Sturgis, 1 more point back from him in 22nd. You got Brian Day, Justin Bolton, Cody Bias. So those guys all back there around 20th and 25th. Very close, within 5 points of each other, and that's why, again, you talked about Overland trying to get through this race. This could be a very wild card race, so to speak. Obviously, next week is going to be an interesting race for sure. Next week we go to New Hampshire, I do believe, and that's going to be maybe a little bit of beating and bang in there. So every position really mattering at this point in the season when you look at those drops. You really want to nail these next few races. Dylan Duvall, obviously you talked about his point scenario right now, sitting P4. That's going to help him out. Sturgis sitting second into 57. He's going to enjoy that for sure and look to move up into the top 20 out of tonight's race if he can maintain that spot throughout to the checkered flag. As we start to approach in on about 10 laps to go here in about 1 lap or so.
50 car of Alex Scribner hit the wall a ton. Laura's going to get this replay queued up here. The Gale Force suspension number 50 coming out of the S, same place Tom Moustakas hit earlier in this race, and he's going to go for a little wilder of a ride up and over for the number 50, and that will probably end the night for the 50 of Alex Scribner. He's going to try to hold on here to try to get this thing onto pit road coming out of the final corner. He'll dip down onto pit road because I'm sure he has a meatball black flag, and the 36 of Justin Bolton going to follow him down. Actually was watching that as the battle for 18th goes on side by side, heading down into corner number 2. The 4-car of Brian Day picks it up on the 37 of Stephen Gilbert, and was watching that at the corner of my eye and saw that 50 get into the fence just behind them. The 4 and the 37 been going at it for the last couple of laps. Looks like Brian Day going to pick up position number 18 on that exchange, but there's another case of missing your marks, and you just miss it by a couple of inches, couple of feet. You take your eyes off the prize per se, and Alex Scribner right now is trying to get that car repaired to salvage what he can out of this race now.
And we've seen a lot of guys have trouble there coming out of those S's. Scribner, this could be a big hit for him because I was just going over the points. He is the guy that's sitting in that last spot to get locked into the Driver World Championship races coming up next month. He only had a 2-point advantage over Derek Crone sitting P21. That's going to hurt him for sure. Obviously, you got to take a look at, is this going to be one of his worst finishes on the season now, as only 13 drivers remain on the lead lap to this point in the race. Kenny Humpy now 13 seconds ahead of PJ Sturgis. But we've seen a lot of guys have trouble coming out of those S's. You get up on those rumble strips, and the car's going to get sideways, and really every incident that we've seen coming out of there is just a case of overcorrecting. You want to turn that wheel a little bit to the left if you're getting sideways towards the right, and it just doesn't hook, and as soon as you catch that grip, you really don't stand a chance. And he got way out of the gas, slowed that thing down, and it was just the luck of the draw that he went up and over and was able to land on the wheels and get back down to the pit lane, but that's going to hurt him for sure. Another thing to keep an eye on is after that big sweeping turn after the bus stop there, and you come into those final 2 corners, you got to watch out for the grass because you just get a little bit of a fraction of your tire on that grass, and the sim is not very forgiving of that, so that's another hazard at this racetrack for sure. As race leader Kenny Humpy experiencing some lap traffic in front of him, trying to get around 2 guys.
One of those is Brandon Schmidt in the 3, trying to stay on 1 lap down, and then you have Landon Harrison, who is your former point leader in the series, 13th place, trying to stay on the lead lap. Those drivers are on completely different laps. This is not for position. 3 goes wide into corner number 1. 89 trying to get past him because it looks like the 89 may have a little bit of a faster car than the 3, but then they have the leader of the race behind them in Kenny Humpy in car number 58. But keep in mind, even though Humpy wants to tiptoe by here, he does have a 13-second lead, as that was almost large. The 3 will bow out of that battle, and now the 89 of Landon Harrison, the only driver in front of the 58 of Kenny Humpy. But the way those guys were exchanging positions, that could have been a lot larger than it was Harrison sitting in 4th place when you factor in the drop in the point standings. So he's trying to salvage what he can here and get out of Watkins Glen with a decent finish, as Humpy will go to the outside of the 89 and will be on the inside for this upcoming corner. So the 58 will put the 13th place car 1 lap in the rear view mirror, as Landon Harrison will be scored as 1 lap down the line, this time by 38 laps completed for Kenny Humpy. And I know you were going down the list. There are drivers that were in the top 20 or just outside the top 20, in the top 30 in the standings, including that drop, Evan. Talked about the changes at Cody Bias Racing. Cody Bias got a duck for Christmas. He actually has a new pet, and I was talking to Cody, and they're taking care of the ducks. So that may be one of the reasons why the 27 car is not here this evening, as he sits 25th, I do believe, in the point standings with that 1 drop. A lot of changes over there. James Pileski going in, Cody Bias getting a duck. Kenny Humpy nearly lost it coming out of the S's in the 58 car. That was a moment for the leader of this race. He had that thing pointed towards the Armco.
And that's exactly what we saw bite these guys, is he got loose and he was able to kind of walk that thing up the racetrack and get the grip, as opposed to what we've seen with those guys that didn't get so fortunate where their car kind of stuck along the right side of the track, so they really had to turn the wheel left. He was able to kind of seesaw that wheel and kind of take it up the track, and again, nearly got in that grass, and that wouldn't have been a comfortable thing, especially coming out of that corner. So again, that could have been a moment for the 58 machine of Kenny Humpy. He's, sideways again off the corner, so he's definitely not backing this thing down. He has about a 12-second lead over PJ Sturgis sitting P2 as the laps continue to wind down. I do believe it is 6 laps to go now. Kenny Humpy sitting P1. His lead has only continued to grow throughout tonight's race, and as we approach these final few laps, has definitely been solid. And PJ Sturgis didn't lead into turn number 1, and Kenny Humpy did so and has not looked back after taking the pole, and he's really showing his stuff here on the road course.
Yeah, the only time he's lost the lead was under the exchange of pit stops to Benjamin Burmeister for a couple of laps, and Burmeister with that strategy running in position number 6 right now, trying to chase down Rich Doucette, but he's got about a second to make up and about 5 laps or so to do it. They are almost 40 seconds behind your leader Kenny Humpy as Burmeister works through corner number 1. Humpy is working up the back straightaway towards the final couple corners to complete lap number 40. This time by for Kenny Humpy. He's got 5 laps left in this race and trying to keep up and take his 3rd consecutive win this season. And Humpy, we saw the only thing that's really slowing him down this evening, Evan, was that lap traffic. He lost a little bit of time the last lap by because he was navigating the 89 and the 3 as they dueled it out for the real estate at Watkins Glen International. 57 to Sturgis comes up this time by. It was 12.2 seconds last time, and it's now 13.2. Kenny Humpy a full second faster that last lap by than Sturgis.
Definitely, again, just so consistent in this race. And again, do you think with a 13-second lead he'd be, slowing that thing down a little bit, but he's still kicking that thing sideways off the corners. And again, he's picked up about 1.2 seconds while he was nearly hitting the wall just 2 laps ago. So just such a strong car. I mean, you got to take a look at his qualifying time. Qualified with a 1 minute 6 second .943. The only driver to break that 7-second barrier. Richard Doucette qualified second, had a 1 minute and 7 second .263. Or 265 rather, so that's a 0.3 of a second difference in qualifying. There's lots of spots on this track that you can make up time and lose time for sure in qualifying, but I mean, you just take a look at first glance, and the only driver to beat and break that 7-second barrier is a fast lap, and he was also fastest in warm-up too, so he knows his stuff at this track, and he's enjoying it right now, P1.
And look at 3rd place right now, Chad Lawton, Dylan Duval in 4th, and Richard Doucette completing your top 5 at this point. Doucette closing in on Dylan Duval. Whether he gets enough time to get there will be a different story, as he's got a lap car in between. That's Brandon Chaburko in the 48, running in position 23 right now. Benjamin Burmeister running in position number 6. We documented it a little bit earlier, about a second or so behind Rich Doucette, and their times about mirror each other. A 1:10.5 for Benjamin Burmeister the last time by. Rich Doucette was at a 1:10.79, so about 0.2 of a second quicker the last time by for Benjamin Burmeister. He has to get up on the wheel in the next 4 laps of this race and try to take away that position, because that's all that's left. This time by, 3 laps to go for the number 58 of Kenny Humpy as he comes across the stripe here. He just put Andrew Fayash a second lap behind, and he's coming up on Brandon Hoff, who had a moment a few laps ago, got into the Armco coming out of the carousel, and heavy damage to the number 23. Add insult to injury for his night. He runs in position 28 right now, about to go 2 laps down to your leader in just a few moments.
Benjamin Burmeister is driving the wheels off this thing, trying to get up to Doucette. He got to the back bumper after he really drove it in hard going into the bus stop. He's about 2-3 car lengths back. I was taking a look at his onboard. He is seesawing at that wheel, kicking the thing sideways. He is trying to get up there and crack the top 5 before this thing is done as they come by the stripe this time by to take 3 to go. Kenny Humpy took that almost a minute ago at this point, way up there in P1. But Benjamin Burmeister in 6th and Richard Doucette in 5th. Don't count these guys out, and I think the 25 of Burmeister might have something for him. However, he's going to lose a little bit of time going up through the S's this time by, but he's definitely going to give it a good effort trying to get to that spot there before this thing's done.
And the one driver hoping that they get busy is Chris Overland in the 47, because he is starting to track these guys down for that spot. And if there's a moment, Chris Overland may be able to squeak out of here with a top 5 finish and maybe pad that point. Well, obviously pad that point lead a little bit more with Brandon Schmidt back in the 30th land and Josh Berry not here and Landon Harrison just outside the top 10 right now. So Overland looking to once again pad that point lead a little bit more. Your leader is up through the S's. He's got about a lap and a half to go before he gets into victory lane for the 3rd consecutive time this season.
Dominant, and that's really the only word you can use right now for Kenny Humpy. And he started to pull away in those opening laps, got it to about maybe 8 seconds before he made the pit stops, and it looked like maybe Sturgis would have something for him on that second go. Sturgis made up about 2 seconds through their pit stops, and then right away again Kenny Humpy just took off. He's in a rocket ship right now, and that number 58 machine, he's coming up on some lap traffic. That is the 00 machine in front of him. He's trying to negotiate his way around that car and get going, because he's going to come out of the final corner here by the start-finish line. He's going to take the white flag, 1 lap to go for Kenny Humpy till he gets to victory lane, as only 11 drivers remain on the lead lap. So these guys sitting up there in those top 5, they have definitely put their work in and have mastered this course tonight. Meanwhile, Richard Doucette still in front of Burmeister. Burmeister not looking like he's going to be able to get to him in time.
And they've got about a lap and a half to go before they take the checkered flag. Kenny Humpy coming up out of the S's. 8th place in the point standings. He does not have a drop. He's got a 0-point drop. When you factor in the drops, Humpy is 57 points behind Chris Overland. You want to talk about a comeback? Tyler Hudson made a comeback in the NASCAR iRacing.com Series World Championship. Humpy trying to do the same. Going to need a little bit of bad luck out of Chris Overland in order to complete that comeback to get a championship. But you got to admit, it's a 3 in a row for the 58 of Kenny Humpy if he can come up out of these final couple of corners and collect the victory. Working it through corner number 8, he'll come up this time and see the checkered flag. Round number 8 in the NASCAR iRacing.com Pro Series goes to Kenny Humpy in the NRT servers, number 58. PJ Sturgis in the number 57, navigating some lap traffic in front of him, but it won't matter because he'll come home with a strong 2nd place finish in car number 57. And then Lawton and Duval, they're going to battle this out to the line for position number 3.
And Chad Lawton got about 3-4 car lengths on Dylan Duval going into these final 2 corners. Duval gets into about a car length, 2 car lengths off the corner, and now to the final time, Duval takes a look to the inside. Can't get there in time. Chad Lawton off the corner, keeps it pointed straight, is going to come across the line and take P3. Duval going to cross the stripe behind him in 4th. Doucette going to take 5th. Burmeister going to cross in 6th. And Chris Overland going to walk out of here with that top 10 that you were mentioning. Going to finish 7th. Brandon Hawk going to work out of turn 8 rather, and take position 8. And Charlie Foster into 13 after spinning in turn number 1 on lap number 1. Comes all the way back up and past Mitchell Hunt there, coming to the white flag. They had a good side-by-side battle down that backstretch that on lap number 44. Charlie Foster going to get that spot, pick up one more before the night's done, finish 9th, and then Mitchell Hunt going to round out the top 10 in his number 19 machine.
Blackford, the only driver on the lead lap outside the top 10. Brad Mahar, Landon Harrison, Alex Warren, Trey Edson, Robert Hall, Brian Day, Stephen Gilbert, Brandon Bowie, and Rob Ackley, your top 20. We're going to step away for just a few moments' time, and we'll bring you back in just a few moments for the post-race show. We'll talk to as many as the top 5 as we can catch up with, as Kenny Humpy getting ready to light it up on the front straightaway. The NRT servers, number 58, 3 for 3 as he gets into the wall a little bit on that celebration as well. We'll step away. Don't go away. The double clutch coverage for the NASCAR iRacing.com Pro Series and LSRTV. Welcome back to round number 8 of the NASCAR iRacing.com Pro Series. New calendar year, it don't matter. Kenny Humpy, 3 for 3 in the series. PJ Sturgis, Chad Lawton, Dylan Duvall, Rich Doucette, your top 5. We go down to victory lane with Evan Pasoka with car 58, Kenny Humpy.
And a dominant 58 it was as Kenny Humpy climbs out of his machine down here in victory lane. Kenny, a dominating performance coming into the Watkins Glen International Road Course, the only road course on this 10-race season. What did you expect coming in here and then when you laid down that number 1 lap in qualifying?
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect coming in. I mean, it's a road course. We usually don't race on them, so it's kind of unpredictable. You don't really know who's going to be fast, except for, some normal guys like PJ, who's almost a pro on the roadside, so it's kind of hard to know what to do. You just kind of want to run your road and race and stay on the track, and fortunately that was enough tonight to be able to get the win. And definitely getting on the pole was a huge help, because if you were in traffic you just seemed to lose a lot of your pace because you couldn't hit your marks. But so definitely the pole was a big key.
Definitely before this race, taking a look at everybody's predictions for this, lots of people said PJ Sturgis, the majority, but there was a couple people, a good number of them, that predicted you to walk away with this victory, and Tim touched on it there. That's 3 in a row for your number 58 machine. After you got out of turn number 1 and the pack was behind you, how'd you just set sail on them and open up such a big lead?
Yeah, like I said, just having that pole was huge, just to be able to get in that clean air and be able to see your marks and everything, and it was huge help. And PJ, everybody was picking PJ there. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He's probably one of the best on the roadside here, and he was pretty good. But hopefully, I was able to just stay on the track and keep the incidents down, and that's pretty much what wrapped the deal up.
Most of the incidents you could say that we saw in tonight's race were single car spins, cars getting loose sideways, overcorrecting, and getting it into those guardrails, mostly coming out of the S's. We saw you had a moment, maybe with about 5 to go, you had to walk that thing up there and try to hang on to it. What challenges did this specific road course bring into effect?
Yeah, I don't know. It seemed like once you were coming up through the S's there, it felt like whenever the weight was transferring back and forth on the rear end, it feels like it just, well, every once in a while you'll get that one point where the car will just feel like the rear end just loses all its weight and just snaps on you, and you just had to be on top of it. And saving the rear tires was pretty big too, because if you went out there and just tried to hot lap and burnt your rear tires up, it would just make that worse. So definitely had to save them rear tires because it just made that problem worse.
You're looking pretty good right now when it comes to locking yourself into the top 20 with the drops. Entering tonight, you were 8th in the championship standings, 57 back from championship leader Chris Overland. So you got about 15 points back to that 20th position. So a little bit of a cushion. This win tonight's definitely going to help. Looking forward to next week's race. Can you do it again at New Hampshire? How confident are you there?
I'm pretty confident. I mean, Richmond's a lot like, or New Hampshire's a lot like Richmond. So I mean, if we're pretty good at Richmond, I figure we'll be decent at New Hampshire. Just to win one of these races is really hard, but to win 3 in a row is almost impossible. So it's just been an awesome streak. I doubt it'll continue on to New Hampshire, but there's always that chance it could.
And definitely, again, before you went 3 for 3 here in these last weeks, we had no repeat winners, so a pretty solid performance that you've been putting on, even with those 2 weeks off. You didn't cool down at all, and you managed to end up right back here in victory lane again. Who makes it happen for you in the 58 crew?
Everybody on the team, Chad, Richard, Kevin, Mike Skinner, all them guys, we put in a lot of time here at Watkins Glen, and it paid off big, so got to thank all those guys. NRT Game Servers, they're always on the car there, and Inside Sim Racing, and you guys for doing the broadcasts. They're pretty awesome to watch, and got to thank you guys as well.
Definitely. Well, congratulations on your 3rd straight win at the NASCAR iRacing.com Pro Series. That's got to sound nice. And good luck coming up at Richmond. Looking to make it 4. Tim, I do believe now you're down on the pit lane with our 2nd place finisher, none other than PJ Sturgis.
PJ Sturgis coming home in position number 2, and one of the odds-on favorites coming in this evening and coming home in position, the runner-up spot, I guess, this evening. PJ, talk about this race and what your night was like at Watkins Glen International.
Well, I knew coming into this that it was going to be a tall order to even keep up with Kenny, never mind beating him. So finishing 2nd to him, I'll take that any day of the week with the streak he's on. So congrats to him. He was in a league of his own tonight. But it was a good run out there. Just to my goal after I saw all that commotion behind me in turn 1 was just to be as consistent as possible and keep the tires on and don't screw up. And I think I did that tonight and brought it home in 2nd.
And you mentioned coming home in position number 2. I know you've been working with the Last Row Motorsports guys throughout the season. It seems like their game also has been elevated this evening. Chris Overland finished up in the top 10. Brandon Schmidt was running strong before the black flag issue that he had. A lot of those LRM guys running a little bit better on the road course compared to earlier, where some of those guys are thinking, I'm not sure how I'm going to run at Watkins Glen. How much can that be attributed to maybe tips from you?
Yeah, I mean, definitely running 4 seasons of Road Pro helped me out and helped the whole team out. We all worked together just trying to work on lines and setups and pretty much everything, pit strategy. And fortunately for Brandon Schmidt, it didn't work out too well for him tonight with that black flag. But for Chris and Charlie, definitely good to bring 3 LRM cars home in the top 10 tonight.
Let's look at this season as a whole. 2nd place here at Watkins Glen. We've got 2 races to go. We head into what is essentially your home track next week at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. You come into this race 22nd in the standings when you factor in that 1 drop. Obviously, the goal is top 20. How big is that, and how big are you thinking points heading into these final 2 races of the season?
Oh, tonight was a huge points night for me. Definitely gave me a little bit of a cushion rather than being right in the bubble. And definitely looking forward to my home track in New Hampshire. Or maybe there we can get move up 1 position and finally pick up first Pro Series win, but that's too far away to think about right now.
And I know the second place run, you have a lot of teammates, and I know you do some road stuff as well, along with the oval stuff. Who would you like to thank for this second place run here this evening? Well,
I'd like to thank both of my teams, InX and Last Row Motorsports, and of course my sponsor, simroom.com and vRacing. They offer quite a variety of sim racing products, so be sure to check them out. But thanks, Tim, and we'll be sure to see you next week in New Hampshire.
And this is going to be one driver to watch in these final two races as he tries to lock himself into the top 20 for the NASCAR iRacing.com Series World Championship. PJ Sturgis comes home with position number 2 this evening. I believe Evan has caught up with our third place finisher in the double clutch, 26, Chad Lawton.
That's right, Chad Lawton climbing out of the race car. Chad, a solid top 3 finish for you tonight after having a little bit of a late race battle with Dylan Duval. Before we get to the race as a whole, walk us through that final lap holding off the 42.
The car seemed to be decent the last 10 laps of a run. I think it was good when the fuel burned off, and Dylan was catching me, so I was just doing my best to be easy on the throttle. On the exit of the corners, the car was really, really loose, and I was willing it, and luckily the last lap happened when it did, or I'm sure Dylan was a few more laps, I'm sure he would have got me.
If you're going to walk away on the podium, you have had strong cars all season long, not necessarily getting the results out of them that you wanted to see earlier with some bad luck a couple races in a row. Now entering tonight, you found yourself 19th in the championship standings when you include the drop, only by 3 points being secured in that top 20. A top 3 is really going to help to that moving forward here. Talk about that.
Yeah, I just looked at the points just now, unofficial, without the drop. I think I'm about 16 points or 17 points above 20th, so I really, really needed this run. I'm glad. Watkins Glen was a really tough track for me, but eventually Rich and Kenny ran so many laps and helped and taught me everything, and able to bring it home in the top 5, which is, I guess, kind of surprising, but it is pro, so ain't much. Well, I'll leave it at that.
And definitely looking forward to the next 2 races on the schedule and the final 2 in this campaign here with the Pro Series. You got New Hampshire, and then we're going to close things out at Charlotte. Looking forward to New Hampshire next week. How does that track fit your racing style? What do you expect when we go there?
I want to say it's one of my better tracks in the sim, but it's definitely not a track that is really racy. It's pretty much single file, and if you can get the car to cut in the center really good and be strong off, you're going to be obviously pretty fast. But I'm looking forward to New Hampshire. I'm looking forward to Charlotte. I think those are some of my better tracks. And as long as I at least pull out top 15s for these next 2 events, I'll be in the top 20, and that's the goal. I know I'm not going to get no championship. I'm way too far out and have way too many bad races. So a few more top 15s, and we'll be off to DWC.
And definitely, you got to look at these next 2 races, knowing you touched on maybe about 15, 16 points back to the 20th spot. How much of these next 2 races is going to say maybe a little bit of toned down racing and points racing?
Well, in this series, it's there's really no give and take. It's all takes. So you kind of just got to take what you can get, and hope someone doesn't take it from you and dive bomb your face and put you up in the wall. That's the scary part about this series that we're currently in, and the track, the way it's built for New Hampshire. So just hoping for the best. If someone's gonna dive bomb me, I guess I might as well let them go. I got to look at the big picture and make top 20.
And definitely, who else makes it happen for you in the number 26 double clutch machine?
Definitely everybody at the team, I guess you would say. Kevin King, Kenny Humpy, Richard Doucette, Mike Skinner's on board. He's a pretty cool guy, and he's kind of crew chiefed us, even though he's doing it for Kenny. He's crew chiefed us the last 2 or 3 events. Definitely want to thank Ed and Jennifer at Double Clutch, and I want to thank Matthew Meach. Visit MatthewMeachRacing.com, and I want to thank you guys for putting on this broadcast.
10-4, man. Good night out tonight. Solid top 3 finish, and good luck in these next 2 races.
Thank you. It was good to have a caution-free race.
Tim, I do believe you may be caught up on pit road, or you're looking for the driver of the number 42, Dylan Duval.
Dylan Duval comes home in position number 4, and talk about a driver running somebody down at the end of the race. Dylan, talk about the battle between you and the 26 coming to the stripe.
It was crazy. I was trying so hard to get to him. Chad was just hitting his marks just as good as he needed to keep me back there, and I'm not going to lie, I sort of threw a Hail Mary into the bus stop, and somehow it worked, and that got me there. I could have peeked under... I shouldn't say I could have. I could have tried to peek underneath him going into the carousel, but that probably would have ended up with both of us in the tire barrier, so I decided to try to wait until the last 2 corners, and I tried faking him, making him overdrive it, and tried everything I could, and I just couldn't get him. I'll guarantee you that was the hardest I've drove in a long time, though.
Overall, a great night, qualifying in position number 6, finishing in position number 4, and coming on strong at the end of this race. 45 laps at Watkins Glen, as Chad mentioned, a caution-free event this evening. Heading into these final 2 races, I know you're trying to run down a top 20 spot in the point standings. What's going to be harder, running down Chad Lawton, as you mentioned, hitting all your marks, or trying to get up there into the top 20 when it comes to points?
Oh, definitely trying to get up in the top 20. For me, my problem with racing in this series is I just can't find any luck, and when I do have a little bit of luck, someone takes it away, and I usually don't finish where I deserve. I can look at probably 4 different races this year where I should have been contention for a top 5 and ended up wrecked. It's unfortunate that that's the way it is, but it just seems to be the way it works out. So, yeah, it's definitely going to be harder to try to make top 20. To be honest, I think I'm pretty much out of that picture. I'm hoping maybe I can get into the top 30 and hold on for a pro license for next year's Pro Series. But that's still even going to be difficult, where I tend to not finish races where I should.
But coming out of this one clean, you have 2 races to go in this season, the New Hampshire Motor Speedway and then at Charlotte. Let's look at New Hampshire next week. Almost a short track, talking about getting into those corners and trying to muscle your way around some of these drivers and trying to beat them to the inside on the corner. What do we expect out of New Hampshire? Have you done any testing there? And what do we expect of the 42 camp?
We haven't worked on it yet, but I'm sure we'll get to it. It's one of my favorite tracks. I would like to think I could finish good there. I've run good at the other short tracks. Had a shot at a win at Phoenix. Wrecked out of the top 5 at Richmond, and by looking at those, I think we could have a good finish. That's if I can put a whole race together like I managed to do tonight. And hopefully we can do that, and I'll have a shot at the top 30.
And I'm sure competition director James Pileski is already over there crunching all those numbers, because I know he likes short tracks. You got a lot of sponsors on your car, and you got a lot of teammates that help you out at Cody Bias Racing. Who makes it happen for this 42 camp?
I'd like to thank gxgaming.com. I'm currently using their headset, mouse, and keyboard. They're great. I recommend them to anyone. Geniusnet.com, Kycom.com, you, Tim, at timscorner.ca, and jdrgraphics.com. Guys who worked on the setup, or at least had some hand in it: Nathan Dunnett, Jared Crawford, David Comstock, Adam Gilliland. Mainly Adam for the spotting he did. He helped me a lot with strategy and whatnot. And lastly, everyone at CBR and competition director James Pileski. I know he's vaping hard right now.
And that is your 4th place finisher, Dylan Duval. I believe Evan Pasoko has caught up with our 5th place finisher, driver of the number 96 Tim's Corner Motorsports Chevrolet SS, Rich Doucette.
That's right, Rich. Climbing out of the race car right now. A solid top 5 finish. Qualified P2. Real quick, walk us through that qualifying run.
Just went out there. We had 2 laps this time, so I went out there. The first one, I put down a nice, easy one. Then when I really went for it on the second one, ended up P2. I pretty much knew going in that no one was going to beat Kenny, so that was kind of like the goal for me.
And definitely then looking into tonight's race, the first time that the Pro Series has had a road course in a while here, Watkins Glen International. Out of tonight's race, there's only going to be 2 races left, so this was really a pivotal point in our season right now. And, how confident were you coming onto the road course?
I was pretty confident. We had a good setup. I knew the pace was there. Just had to keep it on the track. and we'd have a good finish. Ended up P5. I would have liked to do a little bit better, but we'll take it going into New Hampshire.
Definitely, you talk about New Hampshire. That's going to be some short track racing, and that'll be fun. Maybe some bumpers beating and banging. But before we get to that, talk us through this race. We saw a lot of drivers getting sideways out of the S's. Did you find that any challenging at any point in this race?
Oh yeah, I don't think I felt comfortable out there one lap. The track's a real challenge with this car. We don't have a road course car. Our Chevy SS made to turn left, not right. So it makes it a little bit different. It was pretty fun, though. You had to stay on top of your game, stay on your toes, and wheel it the whole night. So it wasn't a bad first effort. I'm sure we'll see that track again in DWC next year. So that'll be interesting as well.
And definitely. Now, you mentioned New Hampshire with only 2 races to go in the season. Once we get to that point and only 1 race out of that, which would be Charlotte Motor Speedway to close things off, how confident are you going into next week's race?
Well, tonight gave us a good buffer. Next week, the goal is just going to be points, trying to lock us in before that last race so we can really go for the win at Charlotte, which is one of my better tracks. We'll see what happens. New Hampshire is a wild card. The way short tracks have gone in this series, it hasn't been good. You guys broadcasted all the races. It seems like we can't run about more than 10 laps without a caution at a short track. So we'll see how it goes. We'll try to stay out of trouble and be there at the end.
And definitely, you got about 32 points right now with the unofficial updated point standings back to 20th spot. You're sitting in 8th right now. Who makes it happen? Sponsors, shout-outs, what gets the 96 card at the track every week?
I'd like to start off by thanking Tim Terry over at Tim's Corner Motorsports. If you're looking for some Canadian ice racing news this time of year, I think that's Tim's specialty. So check out timscorner.ca for that. Kevin King for the good paint, Kevin King Designs, and all the rest of the guys on my team, Kenny Humpy, Chad Lawton, and new addition, Mike Skinner. He's helped out a lot too. So it's a team effort. I'd like to thank all those guys, even though they whoop me week in and week out.
And definitely. Well, congratulations on a solid performance. Not an easy race tonight that we witnessed. So good piece of driving to get that top 5. And we look to see you in victory lane these next 2 races.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Tim, that'll do it down here from the pit lane.
No, it won't, because we got Chris Overland, driver, the number 47, to close this thing off. Point leader in the double clutch, number 47. And Chris, quickly before we close this thing off, Watkins Glen, you told me earlier you were a little bit nervous. How are the nerves now?
Well, I guess it's bittersweet. I feel better, but I also feel bad for my teammate Brandon Schmidt. He was sitting second in points, and I was really looking forward to how this race was going to turn out between us, because I think he was 2 or 3 spots behind me when the incident happened. I don't even have to refer to it, but if it wasn't for that, it would be pretty nerve-wracking right now. But I don't know how big of a point lead I have. Maybe you guys can pull that up, but it's better now.
Looking at approximately 46 points with the drop between you and Kenny Humpy going in with 2 races left to go. So 46 points, 2 races. With these fields, you can't really call it, but you got to admit, it looks pretty good for you right now with 2 races to go. New Hampshire next week, what do we expect?
Expect me to be very, very bad. That is my worst track, and I've had great luck there. Nobody can deny that, but that track is not a good one for me. So I'm not wrapping anything up just yet, but right now I'm feeling pretty good. I was talking to Kenny earlier, and I said I was pretty worried about him, as opposed to anybody else, because he's going to win the next 2 races and win 5 in a row. That guy is unstoppable.
But almost a full race lead right now, and I know you're looking for that championship, but I know it doesn't happen alone. You got a lot of teammates, you got a lot of sponsors on this double clutch 47. Who makes it happen?
Yeah, this week I want to thank PJ and Jake Sturgis, Brandon Schmidt, Charlie Foster, Joey Brown for working on the setup this week. It was ridiculously fast when you ignored the fact that Kenny Humpy was 16 seconds ahead of all of us. So I want to thank them. Double clutch, everybody behind that, Eddie Walzik, Jen Walzik, they're great. I don't want to thank my internet provider, because they almost cost me right there, somewhere in the middle of the race. So Time Warner Cable sucks. Menards, and just everybody behind this 47 team. That I wouldn't be able to do it without all the help I got, I'll tell you that.
And that's driver number 47, Chris Overland. And Evan, one of the things I like about Chris, he tells it like it is, and he's about 2 races away from coming away with his first big championship in sim racing and giving him a little bit of momentum into the NASCAR iRacing.com Series World Championship. And not to sew it up, we've seen comebacks before in big-time sim racing, but looking down at this, it's unofficially 46 points, I believe, between himself and Kenny Humpy. When you factor in that drop, it should be 267 to 221 if my math serves correctly, but that's pretty much a race in between the top 2.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it's got to give you a little bit of a sense of confidence going into these next 2 races. And we heard him touch on that. Obviously, New Hampshire, anything can happen there. There's going to be a lot of beating and banging. Some of these guys, they're still going to be clawing to try to get up into the top 20. We touched on, the battles going around there a little bit. And some guys maybe trying to advance, get a top 5, a top 10 when it's all said and done. So that points lead is going to help if he can survive there. With a top 15, top 10 finish, is going to look pretty good going into Charlotte. So I think things are looking good for the 47 team.
And that's going to do it for us here this week at the Watkins Glen International. Congratulations to Kenny Humpy on the victory. Big thank you to Double Clutch for coming on board this season and bringing you the great broadcasts that you see here on LSRTV. Check them out at winonmonday.com. Some big things coming up in 2014 from Double Clutch. So be sure you check out winonmonday.com and bookmark that website for all the information. We'll be going next week at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway. We'll be here tomorrow night for the Maritime iRacing League. The Patterson Sales and Service 150 kicks off their 2014 season of short track racing. So be there for that. Be here next week for the Double Clutch production of the NASCAR iRacing.com Pro Series on LSR TV. So for Laura Lawson and Evan Basoko and Harrison Weidlitz, who's back here somewhere pushing some buttons or eating something or doing, I don't know what he's doing. My name is Tim Terry. We'll see you next week when we say let's go racing from the New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Keep the hammer down and we'll see you at the track.